Alright, so now moving on to the FPV gear. To power the Hawkeye 200 milliwatt video transmitter, you can actually just solder the positive and negative directly to the flight control to the power distribution board, as long as you're running 3S. So just measure out the length of the wires that you're going to need depending on where you're mounting the VTX, and then cut the wires and solder them directly to the board. So I found the best location for the VTX is on the back of the quad, underneath the rear plate. So as you can see here, I have the power coming straight off the board, plugged into the power input on the Hawkeye 200 milliwatt. A great feature with the Hawkeye is that it comes with a pigtail already installed onto the Video TX. This way you can minimize the amount of connections between the antenna and the VTX, creating better reception. I was able to run the pigtail straight to the top plate of the Armatan quad, which actually has a hole that fits perfectly with the pigtail connection coming off the Video TX. For the antenna, I found circular polarized antennas on RC Group Classifieds made by Goonyworks. They're really great price, and you can customize them to any color, size, and connection that you'd like. I was able to get a really short circular polarized antenna dipped in orange covering to keep with the orange theme of my quad, and I'm really happy with the results. For the FPV cam, I'm using the Aomway 600 CMOS camera. I mounted it on the front of the quad underneath the top plate. First thing you want to do is take the cable coming off of the camera and measure out the length you're going to need to reach the VTX video in. Once you have it measured out, go ahead and cut the wire for the input to the VTX pretty short, and then snip the wire coming off the camera so you have enough slack to reach the other end of the cable going into the VTX. Go ahead and strip the outer coating of the wires, and then what we're going to do is solder these two cables together, in the end resulting in a shorter wire going from the camera to the VTX. Also note that there will be a bunch of loose wires when you take off the coating. These wires are actually the ground, so you're going to want a whole lot of those, and we're going to solder those together in the next clip here. At this point, gather up some small heat shrink, about 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter, so that we can protect each individual solder connection that we make. So once you have all the wires soldered together, go ahead and slide up your heat shrink, and then either use a soldering iron or a lighter to tighten up the heat shrink to protect the connections. I also threw on some electric tape around the port coming out of the camera, as well as the heat shrink covering the connection between the camera and the VTX. As you can see here, I also zip tied the camera wire underneath the frame, and you can tell that it looks like we saved a lot of space with the wiring, and it looks like a really clean build so far. So I always use hot glue when mounting my cameras. It seems to work pretty well, and you can set the angle to any degree that you like. The nice thing about using hot glue is that you can set the angle to about 10 degrees to start if you're just learning to fly, and then gradually increase it as you learn to fly faster.